All right, welcome to the Browns Wire podcast. With me, as always, the very sick but trying to get better, trying to get ready for his Vegas vacation, Donovan James, and my new boss, the new sheriff in town, the new Jeff, the better, more improved Jeff. That's right, Jeff. Suck it if you're listening to this. Jared Mueller, how you doing, boss?
I'm doing good. Listen, Jeff is one of the few people on sports Twitter that I'm actually younger than, or that's actually older than me. Sorry. Like everybody else, y'all are kids to me at some level. Like I try to present a little younger and all that, but it ain't happening. So Jeff's one of the few people that's actually older than me. So hey, old man, thanks for retiring from Browns Wire a little bit, at least for being the boss. But no, it's good to be here. It's good to be on a team. Like, I was on last night with Brad and Jeff, like just jumping right in. And, the Browns Wire has done such a great job. And we're going to be doing this for as long as we can do it. Let's go.
That's right. We're excited to have you. I was listening to you with obviously you were with the OBR for a while, so I'm very familiar with your work. I'm sure you're kind of familiar with. You've seen it on your timeline. I don't know if you've clicked on it. Now you're forced to, unfortunately. But
listen, Jeff's been my boy for. I say this about Jeff. He and I know how each other snore. Like we've been in the same hotel rooms in Indy. We have shut down places in Indy. We have stories. We almost had a Senior Bowls trip this year that was going to be popping. So I've known Jeff for a while. So I always say support the people that support you. Like OBR, those are some great guys. Like I'm still going to be clicking on them. Browns Wire, Dog Pound Daily, Dogs by Nature. Like the reality is I always want to support our people. Like the good people need supported. So absolutely, always clicking on the Browns Wire. Plus sometimes it was. Listen, if I Google something Browns, I'm pretty confident Jeff's article was the first thing in Google. So, I contributed my clicks, and I still will.
Oh yeah. You're pretty well traveled too. Before OBR, you were actually the first host of Locked On Browns. Is that correct? Is that right?
So Locked On Browns basically founded Factory of Sadness over at Fansided, ran the Dog Pound Daily over there. Ran King James Gospel when the Cavs won the championship in 2016. Then obviously over to the OBR and did a little bit with SI for a little while. So I have traveled the gamut as a part of. I freaking love sports. Like there's a level of addiction here. You know what I mean? Like we love this stuff. We can talk about it for days. And so it's been a fun ride. And listen, when I die, I'll retire.
Nice. I heard you briefly talked about basketball last time on Brad Ward's podcast, which by the way, if you haven't watched or listened to All Eyes on Cleveland, please do that. Brad is the absolute best. He just got a fantastic setup, so professional. Not like me, where you can see the bathroom in the background. He's got it going on. But I'm glad that you know a little bit about basketball too. I heard that. I don't know anything about basketball, and Donovan is constantly talking about it on this show.
Now we're going,
constantly talking about it. I can't connect.
All right, Josh. So let me and Donovan have this quick conversation. Cavs, we good with the Cavs conversation, Donovan?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So Colin Sexton. Yeah, that's really the conversation right now, right? Colin Sexton, build around him. What do you got on it?
Nah, man, can't build around him. Gotta get some. Yeah,
Ooh,
I like him. I like
negativity.
I like him, but I don't think that's the guy to build a team around. Really, I think the Cavs would do better to build somebody around in the draft coming up, or make a trade for somebody else because he's not big time. He's not like a De'Aaron Fox or like Ball, or like a big Zion, Luka type of guy. He's a tier down below.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, so Cade Cunningham would be nice, but they screwed up the draft lottery odds. So, Josh, the fun thing in the NBA, it doesn't matter how bad you are.
Jalen Suggs.
Suggs is all right, yeah. I just think he's a duplicate. The bad thing in the NBA, because they didn't want people tanking, it's like impossible now to know where you're going to draft. So the Cavs have had the worst record. They've drafted like 3rd, 5th, 6th, whatever it is. So it doesn't matter. They have a 10% odds of drafting number 5, and they have the 5th worst record in the NBA. Like, it's the dumbest stuff ever. Sorry. Insanity. So thanks for coming onto the Browns Wire, everybody who's watching and listening.
At least you got LeBron. At least you got LeBron at number 1, 2003. So that worked out pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. We finally got the one. We got the one championship, and that's actually what I said last night on Brad's podcast about the Browns. Is as a guy who's covered the Cavs, it's really important. I really am going to be pounding and encouraging Cavs or Browns fans enjoy all of this. Like, it's so easy to get wrapped up in championship. Like, they're freaking going to win games. Like, that's what matters. Like, enjoy the games, and hopefully along the way, there's a championship there. There's an AFC championship, all that. Like, we've had too much bad football to not enjoy winning football. So you're going to hear that from me probably all year long.
No, I'm with you. Now, if you followed the Arena Football League, Cleveland's got a they had a championship pretty recently in Arena Football, though. Okay, so I will say that. Which, for the record, you'll get to know this about me. I watched more Arena Football, which has gone out indoor football and spring league football and Canadian football, than any NBA, any other sport. I just can't get into it. I can't get into it. Maybe it's because I'm so short. I can't.
You don't even watch the Indians, do you?
Mm-mm.
Or the Columbus.
I'll go to the games if I get the tickets for free or for cheap. I'll go to the games. I can't follow them.
Indians are fun to watch this year. I'm not an Indians guy or anything, but they've been a fun team to kind of follow this year a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think as people get older, which you guys aren't, but I am. Like, the reality is that the lack of continuity of schedule makes it really hard to really get into. Whereas for the Browns, I mean, for so many years, it was Sunday at 1:00 because they sucked, right? Like, I knew when I could watch a game. There was only 16 of them. Now there's 17. Like, the Cavs and the Indians, I grew up on baseball. My mom worked for the Indians for years. Like, that was my first love. Football was kind of a backdrop for us. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so football games were far more expensive to go to than baseball games. So we could get to baseball games. We couldn't get to football games. We just couldn't afford it. Browns were always sold out, all that stuff. So I grew up in love with baseball. But as you get older, that's a lot of freaking games. You don't know when they're on. All of a sudden, it's like 1:00 and a game is on. They're playing the Yankees. And I'm like, I'm at work, y'all. Like, it doesn't work for me. So I really like the continuity of a schedule. If I knew when the Cavs played every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I think I would be able to watch more, all that kind of stuff. So as you get older, you kind of have to kind of narrow in on things that are important to you.
And it's funny you talk about the tickets thing because, I was talking to Donovan when the Ohio State spring game rolled around and people were gathering up all the tickets and reselling them. Those tickets were $10, $5 back in the day. When I was a kid, they were free. You go get your autograph, and sit there in the nosebleeds and all that. Those were the only Ohio State games I used to go to when I was a kid for the very same reason. Now you got all these people just hoarding all the tickets and then reselling them online for $100. It's a damn shame. So I definitely know what you mean. I follow you there. If you want, we were going to talk about the NFL draft a little bit, but I kind of like the alley.
Football a little bit.
Well, I kind of like the alley we're going. We're talking about it's your origin story. This is your origin story episode.
Is this Marvel? Is this Marvel? Let's go with Marvel.
That's right. So what was the first memory of you being like, oh, I love the Browns. This is my team.
For me, it was the first memory. I remember players more than memories from my childhood. So I remember Brian Brennan because he looked like me. Like, he didn't really look like me, but Brian Brennan looked like me. I was like, oh, dude, like, is like I can do that, like that kind of thing. And so I just remember Brennan, Webster Slaughter, some of those guys. Like, for me, it was never really the events. It was always the players. I was always drawn to, people, and obviously I'm a counselor by trade now. I was always drawn to the people. I was always drawn to their personalities and those kind of things. And so seeing Brian Brennan now looking back, I'm like, oh, he was kind of a slot receiver, and he was, he's going over the middle, and he's kind of that jukey guy, Eric Metcalf, actually Ice Cube McNeil, little dude, punt returner. That was my dude. Like, I loved how fast he was. Like, there's just all of those. It was always the players, and it was almost always an offensive little dude, I guess. That was kind of who I could relate to a little bit. I couldn't relate to Ozzie Newsome. I couldn't relate to Michael Dean Perry, though I ate that really unhealthy burger they had at McDonald's, the whatever they called that thing. Like, I remember being excited about that bad boy. My arteries are telling me about it even still. But yeah, really for me, it was a lot of the players that really stand out as I think back. And really blame my brother. He taught me. My brother's 5 years older than me. He taught me to read using sports cards. He would hit me with Lincoln Logs if I got it wrong. The dude had me memorizing like Joe Carter and Webster Slaughter, Ozzie Newsome, whoever, like memorizing their freaking stats and stuff. And then if I got it wrong, if I was close, it was one of those little Lincoln Logs. Every once in a while, the big boy came flying at me, and so you learn.
That's funny. one player you didn't mention though that kind of fits that same realm, Dino Hall, another small little special teams kind of guy.
I am not placing him, actually. That's interesting.
Well, I think that maybe I'll have to go back and Google it then. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he wasn't in that same era. I thought he was. But you've been writing for a while. Obviously, you're very familiar with the Browns and doing the draft stuff and the draft coverage. Is there a draft that sticks out in your mind, or maybe when you first started writing something that sticks out in your mind, like a prospect that you absolutely fell in love with, or maybe a free agent that the Browns signed and you're like, this guy's going to be a star, and he busted out, I guess Andre Rison level.
Well, yeah, Bad Moon Rising was huge, right? Like that was when you knew, and then I learned a little bit more about TLC and Left Eye burning his house down. All that later down the road. Unfortunately for me, the draft that really stands out is actually the Johnny Manziel draft because I was in New York. I was in New York for it. So I'm in New York. I'm in Radio City Music Hall. The first time I'm ever there for it. People are going crazy. I'm pissed. I'm like, they drafted this idiot, right? And then
wait. When were you pissed at that pick or the Justin Gilbert pick?
I was actually pissed at the Justin Gilbert pick I was not there yet in my kind of what I was looking at in a player. So I was a little too focused on skill, size, speed, all that stuff. And that's actually kind of my thought on Greg Newsome. He has a lot of good measurables, but he knows how to freaking play the position. And Gilbert is actually kind of a guy who really transitioned some things for me, where I stopped looking at the physical traits first. I started looking at the nuances first. Can you play the game? Can you flip your hips in the cornerback specifically? How do you use your hands? How do you get your eyes around? Started looking at nuance first, then looked at the traits. So Gilbert was the guy I was like, yeah, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, like he's an athlete. Fast. They'll figure the rest of the crap out.
Yep.
But Manziel pissed me off. And many people forget kind of this connection. I'm walking to day 2 of the draft because it's New York and you walk everywhere, go on the subway. And I forget how I was listening to the radio or whatever, because I have no idea what technology was around right back then or what I had. But all of a sudden, so they have Josh Gordon on ESPN that morning. Johnny Manziel, Justin Gilbert draft. Josh Gordon is on Mike and Mike in the morning. I'm walking, and all of a sudden I get Josh Gordon suspended. That happened on day 2 of the Johnny Manziel draft. So he's literally on Mike and Mike in the morning that morning, and everybody's like, yeah, it's going to be great. They got everybody. Gordon's pumped. He literally got suspended 4 hours or so before the start of day 2 of the draft. So some of those kind of things, that's why that draft stands out to me, is everybody thought this was somehow a turn the corner kind of draft. And then just to kind of have this very Cleveland thing happen where he's on Mike and Mike at 7 a.m. and he's suspended by 4. Like it was just one of those kind of things for me.
You have to admit, though, with the Manziel thing, everybody gets all fired up about the Manziel pick, and rightfully so. I like Teddy. Full transparency, I like Teddy Bridgewater more. I saw Teddy Bridgewater in person. I thought he was a much smoother of a player, which obviously, we're splitting hairs because it's not like he's lighting in the NFL up either. But Manziel, at least going into that draft, it was a very, I don't know, kind of like Justin Fields, or Aaron Rodgers kind of deal with it. Like, is he going to go top 5? Is he going to fall? Right. What's going on? But the Brandon Weeden draft, when they took Brandon Weeden, it was like, what is going on? Because that was
no more Oklahoma State players.
Well, yeah. Well, even Justin Gilbert though. Justin Gilbert, you're right. I remember Justin Gilbert specifically. I remember those magazines that came out. One scouting report said worst case scenario is an all-pro punt returner because he was so fast. But Brandon Weeden, in every mock draft you saw, it was like second or third round. The dude was 30 years old. So it was, that was people don't talk about. Everybody talks about Manziel being the big bust, but I just feel like Weeden was so much worse of a pick. Does that make sense?
It does, but and then you even look at that. That's the same. That's the Trent Richardson draft. They gave up a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th to move up one spot. Yep. Like, are you out of your freaking mind? That goes back to that Kellen Winslow trade up.
Oh yeah,
the Cameron Wimbley. Haloti Ngata trade down switch. Like, there have been so many dumb one-pick trades that the Browns have been on the wrong side of for so many years. Yeah, but Brandon Weeden's old. He failed out of baseball. Like, it just was another time where you just have people kind of throwing darts against the wall, just doing whatever. Like, we need this guy. Who was that? Shermer and Holmgren? Like, that's off the top of my head.
It was definitely Holmgren. It was definitely Holmgren.
Yeah, we have to have a quarterback. And, it's just, it just speaks to, like, I talk about my childhood history, and I talk about, Brian Brennan and Webster Slaughter, Ozzie Newsome, all those guys. Think about the people, I don't know your guys' age, but think about those 20-some-year-olds, and their childhood is that. Like, their childhood is him getting stuck under the freaking United States flag.
For that's a good point. Well, for just so you know, I'm 30 years old. I grew up, the two guys above me, that's what I grew up with. Brady Quinn, Charlie Fry, baby.
Yeah, I'm
bought
30
their jerseys and everything, dude.
I'm gonna say mate is Josh, so.
Yeah.
So you got Muscle Guy, and you got the
Wait, Josh, you were born in 90, Josh?
Yeah, dude.
Okay, when's your birthday, if you don't mind me asking?
August. You gonna buy me something?
Mine's September. Damn, dude.
We just had a moment there.
Listen, you guys got to go to training camp together and share in that.
I'm actually going. I'm going to Cleveland for the first time. I just got the schedule released. I gotta look at work and all that stuff. Day job. I'm making the trip.
You know the trip you should make, right? You know the craziest part of the schedule that we didn't talk about last night.
I want to go to the Arizona game because
yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah,
the day after my birthday.
I just want to meet Coach Hansen.
Which one? My coworkers,
Cliff.
My coworkers call Stefanski Coach 10 because they think he's really attractive.
Oh, really? I mean,
yeah, they call him Coach 10.
Hey, Cliff, man. I mean, that's
a good-looking dude.
Dude.
The day you got to go, Halloween, week 8, Steelers at home. Are you freaking kidding me? How nuts that will be!
It's gonna be a
like
tough
it'll
ticket,
put
man.
OU. Oh, it'll be a tough ticket.
Yeah.
It'll put OU. Like OU will look like nothing compared to what the heck that's going to be.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy. You
guys, we all got to meet up, man. If I go, like whatever game I go.
Hey, it's the day after my birthday, so my wife is in charge. Listen, 15 years, 17 years together, whatever the heck we are. Whatever she says goes.
Josh might be married by then. I don't know.
Maybe. I have been engaged for 2 years now.
Yeah, I know. Dude.
So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What is a draft that you remember that stuck out that you're like, oh, this? So you talk about how you hated Manziel, you hated Justin Gilbert. What's the guy where you're like, this guy's going to be great, and he still sucked?
Ooh, he's gonna be great, and he still sucked. I don't get those wrong. So I'm not sure. Like,
even with Trent Richardson, you knew Trent Richardson was going to suck.
No, actually, I thought Danny Shelton was going to be good. I thought he had enough explosiveness. I thought he had enough hand technique. And to be honest, it's an optimist in me. So that draft, again, we can talk about 2 picks again. Cameron Irving, I'm like, okay, he's got to be good at something. Like, he can play all 5 positions at Florida State.
High level too. I mean, we're talking about
at a high level. Like,
player.
He's got to be good at something. Like, I didn't think he was going to be a tackle. I just didn't think that worked for him. But I'm like, he's got to be a good guard. Like, if you're athletic, you can freaking play guard. And all of a sudden, it's instead you get a nose tackle and a 6th man in the first round. So I was really confident in those 2. I didn't think it was. I thought it was a meat and potatoes draft. I was like, all right, great, because for me, like, the skill positions are fun. I will tell you, I get really excited about free safeties. Like, I can go across the board, like the Buda Bakers. Last year it was Jeremy Chin. I liked Grant Delpit. Like, I get so excited about free safeties, and I've been begging the Browns to draft a free safety for like a decade. So I'm really hoping Grant Delpit can be it. I love John Johnson III. I'm not sure he's a pure kind of free safety. I love Derwin James. I love free safety. So I've always been in on those, and I haven't missed on a free safety. There are a lot that I've really, really liked. So like Winfield last year was another example. But yeah, that meat and potatoes draft, I'm like, great. Lines. Figure the rest of the crap out. There's no quarterback. I thought they were going to try to move up for Marcus Mariota that year, which obviously, looking back, seems like they lucked out. I don't know. Either way, it would have been terrible. They would have given up a ton to get up to get Mariota too. Yeah. But
he would have been hurt earlier.
Yeah, so those are my 2 that I just thought these got to be good. They may not like be game changers, but I swore there's no way they're not going to be good players for the Browns for the next decade.
Yeah, I remember having those guys really high on my board too. Cam Irving, the same thing. He even played center at Florida State. I mean, he played, you know what I mean? So it was like
everything.
He was a high-level starter at an ACC school at all 5 positions. So it's like that means he's got to be average at least least one position. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then Danny Shelton was so good. He was a dominant. We were talking about a guy who took triple teams constantly. He was so good that the other defensive tackle, or I can't remember who it was. He's in the spring. I think he's in the spring league now, but he had like double-digit sacks in the Pac-12 and was drafted in like the third. I think he was supposed to be drafted in like the 3rd round. I think the Eagles picked him up. Elijah, I can't remember, but that's how good Danny Shelton was. That guy was out. The other guy was out
it all right.
Like a year. Yeah, everything. And he was fantastic. So I thought the worst case scenario, if he sucks, he's going to be so big, he's going to be an immovable object, and that wasn't really the case either. Very strange how that works out.
And that goes back to understanding, kind of getting more and more knowledge of how people win in the NFL, right? So Danny Shelton wanted to be and Larry Ogunjobi had some of this too. He wanted to be a 3 technique. He wanted to be a penetrator. And instead he needed to eat up blocks. And so you're not. And it's actually, we have your piece, Josh, up on Tommy T. It's actually my concern with him is I don't know if he's fast enough to play 3, and I don't know if he's big enough to be a 1 tech. Right? Like there's this weird tweener thing, but you have to know what you're good at. You have to play the way you need to play. And Danny Shelton wanted to fire off and split the gaps, and they just washed him out of plays. He didn't want to kind of get down in his haunches and take on blocks. And so I actually did a piece on the OBR. You guys can find it at my old site. But just kind of looking back at the difference between Danny Shelton and Vita Vea, there's a lot of similarities. And then you look at some of the numbers, some of the explosive things. So looking at either their RAS, their relative athletic score and stuff, it's like, wait, they seem like similar players. Yeah. And there's just little areas you're like, oh, that's the difference between a just a guy, and a guy who can actually make a difference. And so, again, it's always learning. You always got to figure out what you need to learn, what you get sucked into, what you get excited about that you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, and Danny Shelton's a really interesting case too, because we always have Bill Carroll on it. I'm sure you're familiar with Bill Carroll. He always says situation is everything, and I first heard that from him probably 5-6 years ago, and that's really stuck with me because it really is. And Danny Shelton seems like a really good example of that, because his rookie year there were a lot of flashes of him doing really well, him having at the very least he had great leverage and wasn't getting moved. And then as years went on, it was like, dude, this guy. It felt like once someone got their hands on it, it was game over. And it felt like he was just ready to give up. And, I don't know I'm not saying he would have been an all-pro player, but, that does play a role when a player is just like, hey, I'm not getting anywhere with this, and we suck. I'm done. So a lot of times you'll see good players just not thrive. It's a more obvious, I think, with the skill position guys, with the talent around them. Obviously as a Browns fan, you see that there's no way in hell that all 20 quarterbacks we've drafted the top 2 rounds have sucked this bad. No, it's impossible. But the situation is everything.
I mean, I always say, if the Browns had drafted Tom Brady instead of Spurgeon Wynn, my buddy Stephen Thomas, the comedian out in California, would have married Giselle, and no one would have had a clue who Tom Brady was. Like, that's 100%. Just the reality of it, right? And so you can also think of that now. Like, think of Wyatt Teller. Before Bill Callahan, I mean, last year he was the best guard, according to PFF, most of the year. Like, Wyatt Teller may have made $30 million because he was on the Browns, Kevin Stefanski, Bill Callahan. Like, he's talented, but he wasn't that talented, right? So, it's all, all of that stuff matters. And so many times people are like, oh, they're a bust, they're this, they're that. Listen, give Deshawn Kaiser Josh Allen's playbook from his rookie year. So instead of throwing the ball 40 times, he's running 10 times a game, and he has easy options, half fields, half reads, all of that kind of stuff. Let him slowly develop. Instead, Hugh Jackson has him throwing the ball 46 times a game. All that stuff really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny talking about Deshawn Kaiser, because I'm such not anymore. I've come to realize that Deshawn Kaiser.
Wait, are you a Notre Dame guy?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, I write for Buckeyes Wire. You know that.
I did know that, but I just wanted to make sure. Listen, we can. Sometimes you make business.
We did have a Notre Dame guy last week.
Sports Illustrated.
But the Deshawn Kaiser thing, I have slowly come to realize that it didn't matter where that guy played. He didn't want Donovan actually has a fairly close relationship, and people that know Deshawn Kaiser, his attitude, he just wasn't going to hang in the NFL. With that said, again, like you said, this is a guy that was thrown to the wolves. The day they drafted him, Hugh Jackson came out and said, "This is a guy that's not going to be ready. We got to give him time, but he's got all the talent." Boom, day one, he's out there. It's like, what are you doing? What's going on? How, and it just destroys any goodwill that you could possibly have. And it's absolutely crazy.
I need to hear this story. I need to hear something out of Donovan on this story, and then make sure I tell a Hugh Jackson story that I'm not sure has ever been out there yet. So might as well drop one in here. But so tell me about Deshawn Kaiser there, Donovan.
I mean, my cousin played college football at Cal Berkeley. He's like my little brother because I don't have a brother, but he played at Cal Berkeley. He's really good friends with Deshawn Kaiser and that crew. And Deshawn's actually in Tennessee now, which is where I am. So I might see him at a party in Tennessee is all I can say. Like, that's a good – I don't want to say – but I mean, yeah.
No, listen, you got to do what you got to do, right?
He likes to have fun, man. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean –
But he's still hanging around the NFL because, I mean, he's young. He's like –
Where's he at?
Tennessee signed him practice squad.
He's on the practice squad there.
What is he? 26. I mean,
he's 25. Dude.
Think how long ago Hugh Jackson and Deshawn Kaiser seems like. You know what I mean?
I know.
Well, he was 20 when he got drafted.
Yeah, because this is his fourth team already.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
so yeah. I mean, I hate Ben Roethlisberger from time in Miami when I was down partying in Miami when I was in college. So. Oh, I just gave away my age a little bit there. So I think I was just about to graduate when Ben was like a sophomore, junior at Miami.
Really?
Yeah, and he was exactly all the stories you may have ever heard or rumors, and he was absolutely that. Every bit of it, all the way back to Findlay High School. He was every bit of that. So
he was a douchebag in high school too?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my.
Because I thought that because he didn't play till his senior year, right? In high school? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were some coaching things and some family and some. Yes. I mean, just a whole bunch of baloney in there. But yeah, he was a arrogant little douche from Jump Street. So, so real quick, Hugh Jackson story, just because it's fun. At one point in time, Hugh Jackson, there was a press conference. It might have been the Todd Haley press conference. Todd Haley press conference ran like hour late. The reason it ran a hour late is Hugh Jackson brought all the media in and had film cut up about how bad his players were. Like, for real, was like, all right, well, look, how am I supposed to succeed with this? Now, look at this. Do you see he's not getting any separation? Do you see this? Do you see this? Do you see what I got to work with? Are you outside your mind, dude? Like, it was literally, I remember, like, Haley was about a half hour late because Hugh Jackson wanted the media to know how bad his players were so that the media would give him sympathy. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever secondarily heard and experienced and seen enough proof to know that I can say this out loud.
That's wild. Let's talk about that a little bit. When he got hired, he was a hot shot off the corner from Cincinnati. And I remember when he got hired, I was working with Jeff, and both of us liked the hire. 100% in on it. I think, this is my theory, I think that he is a good coach and he's got a good offensive mind. He just is not a people person and he can't handle pressure and he panics and plays the blame game. Does that make sense? I feel like he's not a bad coach. He's just a really bad head coach. Does that make sense? Or am I completely off base?
No, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I was really excited for him. I thought I thought he made sense. I really like the staff that he brought in. I like people with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And I felt like he brought in a bunch of people who weren't given the chances they deserved. I thought he brought in people that, all of that, but I think you go to fit, right? Like, he knew when he got in there, like, him and Sashi had different goals. Like, it was very clear. They talked about it like it was not, but you could see it. It'd be like, yeah, we don't have to win. But he'd be like, remember that, Jimmy. Like, don't fire me because we're not trying to win games up in here. So I had a lot of, So I think the reality is everybody needs to know if they're good at something, right? Like, just because you're a good number 2 doesn't mean you're a good number 1, right? Like, I might be a really good counselor, but I may not be a good administrator. Now, I think I'm good at both, thank goodness, because I've been one for a long time. But just because you're a good number 2, just because you're a great defensive coordinator, literally the skills you need to be a head coach are not the same. At almost every level, they are literally different skills. Because you can install an offense does not mean you're a good head coach. It doesn't, or defense. They're literally different skills, and that's what drives me nuts about the NFL is, and I think the Browns are an interesting case study. They wanted to hire Kevin Stefanski. He had 4 games as offensive coordinator. Because it didn't matter that he was an offensive coordinator. Is he a leader? Now, obviously, they waited another year, or they had to wait another year because Dorsey wouldn't hire him. But the reality is those are 2 different skill sets. So I don't care if an offense is good or a defense is good. Like, how do you find real leaders? Because that's what you need as a head coach.
And it's such a hard thing to determine. And there's still, again, kind of like what you were talking about earlier with all the factors in the situation. I was speaking to a buddy when Urban Meyer got hired, and we're going to have him on the show here eventually, but he was on Urban Meyer's staff in college.
I'm sorry, you're going to have Urban Meyer on the show?
No.
All right, well, I'm nothing. See you.
A friend of mine, Ryan Stewart, he might be listening right now. He was on Urban Meyer's staff a couple of years ago, and we were talking about the chances of him succeeding in Jacksonville. And he said, here's the deal. If he gets good people around him, he'll succeed. If he doesn't, he won't. And I'm like, well, that's like a cop-out. But he's like, that's just the facts because he doesn't know how to coach in the NFL. I'm telling you that right now. But he is a good people person. The reason why Nick Saban sucked in the NFL was because he was a terrible people person. He was talking to these grown-ass men like they were kids. And you could hear story. I know Channing Crowder, I've talked about how Jason Taylor said, I can't remember the exact quote, but basically told Nick Saban, you better not be talking to me. I make $50 million. I have $50 million in the bank. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he said, Urban Meyer's not going to do that because he's a good human being, but he's got to have the people that know how to coach in the NFL. So I thought that was very interesting, kind of like very similar to what we're talking about with Hugh Jackson on a different level, I suppose, if that makes sense.
Right. And obviously the free agency, his statement on free agency is a sign that it's not exactly going right. Like, I didn't get to meet with these guys and have dinner and meet their parents. And that's a little bit of a concern. By the way, Donovan, I'm really impressed, man. After my second shot, my head would have been on the table 31 and a half minutes into this bad boy. So I just want to let you know, like, stamina, like, my dude, you're doing it. Because I was done with my second shot.
Donovan,
I'm burning up. It's hot.
Donovan, you're wearing a hoodie, bro.
Sweat it out. Well, it's weird because if I take it off and be cold, I have like the chills, man. It's
buddy.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
There's no right temperature.
Like, I don't really know what to do. Yeah, like there's no fan on, but if I turn the fan on, it's gonna be too cold or too hot. Yeah, so it's just like I'm just gonna listen to y'all talk about football. Talk about football with you guys. Like,
hey, listen, here's the reality. I'm gonna say this. I work in a medical facility. I'm gonna use this time for half a second. Please get your shot if you're able to. I really would like you guys to do that. It's really good for you, despite what Donovan's going through and what I went through. It is good for you.
I'll be all right.
It was miserable for about 48 hours, and I'm a big old wuss. Listen, that's just my PSA. Worst case scenario, so you can get in on the $1 million drawings and get that paper. And if you get your shot, because I said this, can I get a stack? Can I get something out of it? Like, whatever. Like, can you get me tickets to that Steelers game on the 30? I'm just kidding.
Donovan, are you aware of this? Because Donovan's not in Ohio. Donovan's in Tennessee.
Oh yeah, he's down in Tennessee. Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it. Yeah, West Virginia's giving out money, and there's
they are.
Yeah, West Virginia. Because your boy that was on last week was talking about it. I can't. What was his name?
Nate. Nate was talking about it.
Nate. Yeah, he was talking about it. I guess he's got family in West Virginia or something. He was talking about it. He added me on Facebook too, by the way. He's cool, man. I like that guy. And that's also where I always like. Josh made fun of me one episode because he was like, "How do you know so much about Jeff Riston's like family?" And I was like, "Because of Facebook." He posts a lot about his kids like all the time.
Well, his freaking son's a giant.
And his daughter's pretty. I mean, she's tall too.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff's 6'6", dude.
Yeah, if you hear Jeff stories about volleyball, you're like, you're the. I mean, and if he ever gets you into the Korean throat singing. The group, I think it's called the YU. They're up in these mountains. The stuff is like, you're at first you're like, this is really weird and stuff, but it actually kind of bangs. Like, Like at first I was like, I don't know what they're saying, but it's got a beat to it. So
yeah. Jeff's music taste is great, man. I went to
hardcore stuff.
I went to a Slipknot concert, and he was like, "Yeah, dude, like, I know." It was like the heaviest concert I've ever been to. It's crazy. I went for free.
Slipknot is not heavy for Jeff.
That's I know.
Yeah.
For me,
Jeff, that's when Jeff goes to sleep.
Yeah, no shit. I was like giving him a hard time and just making fun. I'm like, oh yeah, he loves hardcore stuff, like Creed and Nickelback. Real hardcore stuff.
So tired of that joke.
I know, right? He loves that hardcore band. What's it called? Hinder?
Lips of an angel, baby. Lips of an angel.
Hey, that song goes deep with me. I make fun of it, but I think I got my first went to second base to that song. Yeah.
I was gonna say, what, you were making out with a girl while your girl was in the other room? Like,
you probably listen to Bug Cherry too, Josh.
Hey,
dude, that was a banger, bro.
Dude, come on. All lit up again. Like right before you go out to this was college for me. So right before we went out and got I mean that, or I love the cocaine. I love the Puddle of Mud was big back
Johnny Manziel, man.
Yeah, that's his theme song, right?
No, it's funny.
So what do you guys think about the draft? No, I'm just kidding.
Let's go. Well, Donovan, I feel like I'm soaking up all of this time. Donovan, do you have any questions or anything you want to add before we start diving into the draft stuff?
No, I like Jared, man. He's cool. He's cool. I like him. That's all I can say.
All right. I got a lot of concerns about both of you. If you think Jared's cool, we're gonna have to revert. We got to figure something out because that. Listen, it is what it is.
We decided to have different type of people on this show. We've had a lot of different type of people. I feel like since I've been on October is when I started with you, Josh. I think so.
Oh yeah, man. We're coming up on
different is the right term. Like I'm cool with that. Like. I'll just be real honest. My friends, and especially in college, are like, so my family is all West Virginian. Like I had an Uncle Golden and an Aunt Mabel, and I have gone to the bathroom in an outhouse. But my brother was really good at sports. And so we played in the city. And so even at Wright State, there were two gyms that we would play ball at, and one I didn't fit into, but I went to, and the other I would have fit into, but I never liked playing there because they played this wussy style of basketball. Like I have this unique little, got a little country, got a little city, and it all just kind of comes together into whatever this package is.
You still hoop?
Yes, as often as I can.
I want to see Josh. I want to see Josh play basketball.
So bad, dude. So bad. I played in middle school, bro. It was so.
That's all I want to see it.
So I'm short, man. I'm short.
Hey, we'll go young, old. Me and Risden.
Oh God.
And you two.
That's not gonna be.
Because listen, Risden and I guarantee this. We haven't played together, but I guarantee we would run pick and roll
y'all would
all day, every day, and we would just destroy you. Like I'm right-handed, and I dribble and pass with my left hand all day, every day. And because of some back issues, I'm supposed to be 6'4", but I'm only 5'11". And I've got the arm length of a 6'4" dude.
Okay.
No one blocks the shot because they think, just their natural inclination is the ball's going up at this level. Nah, it's about another 7 inches higher or whatever than it's supposed to be. So,
no, we're definitely losing. I'm not that good. I'm not good. I like basketball, but I'm not good.
Donovan, you're 6 feet tall, though, right? Are you 6 feet tall?
5'11".
Close enough. I'm barely 5'8", bro.
Hey. All you got to do with big dudes like Jeff, he's a little skinnier.
We got weight though, Josh.
Get low and push him out of the bottom. Get into his legs, push him out. I mean, he hurt his leg earlier this year. We saw him with the leg cast up, all that stuff. So yeah, Greg Newsome. What did you guys think?
I was about to start talking about Charles Barkley, how I grew up. That's how I modeled my game after, because I was the kind of chubby guy that would get rebounds all the time. I like Dennis Rodman, Charles Barkley. Those are my dudes. But anyway.
No, you're good.
Happy birthday.
For the basketball talk, man.
Happy birthday, Dennis Rodman, by the way. He's 60 today.
You think he's listening?
He might be in Vegas this weekend when I go, which would be insane because he has a house there.
Hey, jump in with it. But anyway, I want to do this. That's actually a good connecting point, though. One of the things I've said to people is, and I think Jeff actually said it last night, is there is a part of me that worries that Baker is Mark Price, and this Browns team, Cavs team was ridiculously good with Price and Harper, Larry Nance, Brad Doherty, Craig Elo. That team was awesome. But it's Pat Mahomes, Michael Jordan. right? Is Lamar Jackson, Karl Malone, and John Stockton. Like, that's just the reality of when things happen. Is if the Browns were this good, I don't know, 10 years ago, would they have an easier path? And then again, that goes back to enjoy the freaking ride, like enjoy the process, not be as worried about the outcome. But yes, I'm very worried that Pat Mahomes is Michael Jordan. And my Mark Price and young Cavs days, like those are some tough times to deal with. Like Mike, man, I hated that bullcrap commercial.
See, that's actually a very interesting topic because we talk about Baker a lot on the show, obviously, but he's kind of a polarizing prospect. He's kind of a polarizing player because you get people that Donovan and I have a consistent argument where I believe he is entrenched currently as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I think you can make a solid case that he is the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. Now, I don't not just based off of what you see from his time at Oklahoma and what he's doing currently, even his time at Texas Tech, his ability to thread the needle when his feet are set, when everything is going right, I think is uncanny and it's unparalleled. Okay, now I don't know if there's any PFF stats I can pull out of the cloud to prove that, but I seriously believe that Baker Mayfield, that's his best trait, is that he is supremely accurate when he needs to be and when everything goes right. So I think the gap between him and a guy like Patrick Mahomes is not as big. I don't think it's so big that it's not that you can't overcome it with additional talent, right? I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to be able to win if he's throwing to guys. So Patrick Mahomes can win another Super Bowl if his best receiver is McCole Hardman, right? And right. I think that Baker Mayfield could be the same way. I think even if you got rid of Jarvis Landry and OBJ, which I'm not recommending, last time we said something like this, we got hated on a little bit. No one loves OBJ more than me. But even if you got rid of those guys and you had your best receiver, your number one guy was Rashard Higgins, I think he can still win with that. I think that he's very, very good. Now, is it ideal? No, but I think that he's the guy. I really do.
So on what side? So you're on that side, Donovan. Where do you fall on this?
Josh always says this argument. I think Baker's the top 10 quarterback.
You do?
Yeah, but the gap is no, he's not.
That's where our argument was.
That's where
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he's in the bottom, like
the gap.
9. Yeah, he's got this year is his year, man. He could be an MVP candidate this year, but he could be like these guys are. Like Josh Allen he had an MVP season last year. You know what I mean? That's an MVP caliber guy. Mahomes already won MVP and Super Bowl MVP. I think there's a gap. I still think he's a top 10 quarterback though. I just think I loved Baker coming out, dude. Like, you know that. Like, I love Baker.
more than me. He was not my number one quarterback. Dude. He was my number 4 guy.
I love Baker Mayfield
that year
so much, dude. But he's just not. It's okay, dude. It's his 4th year. You know what I mean? It's not there yet, but he could be. He very well could be. That's what I think. This is where we differ, but it's not that off. I
guess that's my confusion is because he was my number 4 quarterback coming in, and I can go back to my notes and you'll see where accuracy. He's more accurate than Josh Allen, although Allen's a bigger physical freak. He's more accurate than who was the kid that stuck from you, Rosen. Yes, but Rosen, he looked very pretty when throwing the ball, and that does count. That does matter, right? Quarterbacks that look smoother are typically smoother. That's just how it is. It wasn't in that instance, but I think there was some off-field stuff going on with there, right? And then who there was another quarterback in that class. Oh, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold. Watching him play at Ohio State, watching him play some of those clutch games against USC, there were times where he put the team on his back. So there wasn't necessarily a trait. It was more or less like kind of it's the same reason why I fell in love with Deshaun Watson. It was like, dude, there was really his best receiver was my side, was Dylan Mitchell, and he's winning games. And if you go back and look at a lot of the interceptions he threw at USC, because people point to that, they were his fault. I remember specifically the interception he threw to, I think it was Denzel Ward in the Rose Bowl, was Dylan. It would think it was Dylan Mitchell's fault because he didn't. Steven Mitchell. Thank you. I'm
a USC fan. Sorry. So
there you go. Yeah, but he didn't.
I'm from Southern California. I'm Jerry, by the way.
That makes sense.
Yeah. He's like,
but you can see where other guys' fault. We can forgive that stuff. We're good then.
I mean, you guys beat the hell out of us that game. I remember what game we talked about. Yeah, but even being a USC fan, I watched every snap Sam played. I still like Baker more.
Coming out of college.
Yeah,
Baker had way more talent coming out of college. Baker's talent at Oklahoma was the part that was like,
dude. We had Josh Matro Bebe on. He told us how good that USC receiver room Sam had. Sam had Ronald Jones and Juju Smith. and like he had a really good team in college, like you know what I mean. So it wasn't like he had
so he was one of those upside guys where like he's young, so he's going to develop. Like
I still think he's going to be good too with Carolina.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, how much can Adam Gase screw a person up, right? So
I don't know. We can look at Ryan Tannehill.
Ryan Tannehill is the one exception to the rule. I think what's really interesting. So that class, I had Lamar and Rosen at the top, and Allen. Like I would have taken Allen in the second or third round.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
I was high. I liked all four of the other quarterbacks. I was very high on Lamar, and I've shared this on different podcasts before. Sometimes in Indianapolis, people drink liquids, share information that they shouldn't, and I have it on very good authority that the Browns would have drafted Lamar Jackson at 33 after drafting Baker Mayfield at number 1. Talk about really a jacked up flipping team. Yeah, they would have drafted Lamar Jackson at 33. I know that for sure. Very, very sure, because I had multiple conversations with assistant general manager-ish types over different days. Talk about, I mean, someone was going to get screwed up there.
Baker would have lost his job when he got hurt, probably.
And who would Hugh Jackson would have wanted, right? Remember, Hugh Jackson loved Robert Griffin III, right? The ground moved beneath him. He liked the flexibility of movement and stuff. So Lamar would have been treated like Deshawn Kaiser, and he would have thrown the ball 40 sometimes, right? So, I just think it's just such an interesting, what could have been. I mean, oh no, the Browns wouldn't have had Austin Corbett, but it would have been such drama. Like they could have had a backfield with Baker, Lamar, and Nick Chubb. Like, are you kidding me? How much fun could that have been? But yeah, we can digress. I think we are going to have to do a better job in the long-term future because we could just talk about football all day, every day, right?
Oh yeah. But I guess that's where my Baker confusion came from, is that I wasn't as high on him, and now I'm like, oh my god, he's so amazing. And people that were high on him are kind of like, but maybe that's because of my Cleveland bias. But we can move on. It's one of those things where it's pretty decisive, pretty polarizing topic. We're getting to the 46-minute mark, so I do want to ask you about this year's class before we sign off. Give me your overall thoughts. Who's your favorite prospect? Don't give us the obvious answer. And who's someone that made you raise your eyebrows? And what are your expectations?
Honestly, like the excitement is really there. It's palpable. Like I'm looking. So we get this confirmation bias. Once we have the actual players that are drafted, our brains naturally then go to look at all the highlights. Like I'm pretty confident I didn't watch a single snap of LeCount before the draft, and now I'm like, oh, look at this dude, like he can hit, he can do it. It's ridiculous, it's illogical, but that's the way we go. I look at this draft as a very flexible draft. I look at it as a group of players who can do a lot of different things, and probably half of them aren't going to be on the team in 3 years. Like that's just kind of the way the draft really works. And I know that sounds terrible, 3 or 4 years. They're not going to be second contract guys, and that's okay. The Browns need guys who can do a lot of different things, that have some versatility. I think Tony Fields is a perfect example. He's one of my favorite picks in this because of his versatility. And listen, if JOK gets hurt, if they need somebody in the slot, they need somebody on special. Like one of the only things Freddie Kitchens ever did well is say special teams is a third of the team. Well, LeCount, Tony Fields, like I like what they've done with the flexibility, assuming all these guys are going to hit. Listen, Demetric Felton fell to where he fell, not just because he didn't run well. There's other reasons for why he fell there. But I like the class. It's got speed. It's got versatility. The same way I like free safeties. Well, JOK is kind of a safety, and Tony Fields is kind of a safety, and LeCount is a safety. Like I love guys who can do a lot of things. Like I want a guy who can play safety, come down in linebacker. I want a defensive end that can move inside. I want a cornerback who can jump up into free safety if need to be. I like guys like that. So the versatility and the flexibility is really what stands out to me in this class. And I think they were very purposeful about that to say, listen, when you're looking at depth and when you're looking at the one thing the Browns haven't had ever, and what I think has separated them from the Steelers and the Ravens and the Patriots is they haven't had guy number 53 that's been on the team for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? That just knows the system. He's not going to make huge mistakes. He can step in right away. He's not going to blow your socks off, but he can just step in. He's been in the system for a long time. And that's what they're trying to build right now is all those flexible versatile guys. So if some of them hit, they can do a couple different things as the 48th, 50th guy on the roster who they hope is around for 3 or 4 years, and then let somebody else overpay them like the Browns have overpaid former Steelers, former Ravens, former Patriots for so long, and then they've kind of crapped out in roles that are, number 20 on the roster instead of number 48, 50. So the versatility is really key for a team that wants to build their roster, their identity for the next 3 to 4 years, and then keep churning that as they go.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It's funny you talk about the number 53, 50, 52, 50 to 53 guys on the roster. Back in the day when the Browns were at their worst, you'd see guys that were that level of player, like a guy like Tate Carter. Tate Carter was a very solid football player. That guy, if he was on a good team, he would be on the team for 4 years, 5 years, kind of like your Nate Ebner with the Patriots. Nate Ebner's not good. He's not a good football player, but the Patriots are good enough to where they can have a guy who's a special team specialist, whatever you want to call him, 53rd on the bench. But the Browns were so bad that even when they had that kind of player, they were constantly trying to get him out, get him in, get him out, get him in, trying to move things around because they're trying to find that X factor. Now the Browns are drafting for guys where it's like, hey, like Felton. Felton, you talked about, it's a good example of Felton. Everybody talks about his pro day. You're right. He did not dominate UCLA. Those are the facts. The Pac-12 was down. He played in an offense that allowed him to have a lot of space, and he didn't dominate. There's 20 other running backs in the college football this past year that would have just smashed in that system, right? But he plays a specific role that the Browns are looking for, right? He has elite hands coming out of the backfield, and he's a very good route runner for a running back / wide receiver, right? He plays that role perfectly. The Browns can roll the dice on that guy, just like Anthony Schwartz. Yep. I mean, shoot. The wide receiver, we've been talking about the draft. It's embarrassing. I forgot his name, but the opposite wide receiver from Anthony Schwartz, Donovan, do you remember the wide receiver for Auburn's name?
Eli Stove was the third.
No,
receiver.
Not Eli Stove. Eli Stove.
I like Eli Stove, man. That's a steal right there. You're talking about Seth Williams.
Seth Williams has got a couple inches on him, 10, 15 more pounds on him, and his speed is not quite there, but it's just, it's not, he's not slow, right? And you're more well-rounded wide receiver. I had Seth Williams higher on my big board than Anthony Schwartz. I have no problem with the Browns taking Schwartz because it's like, okay, well, this addresses more of this fits that, this peg fits that shape. The Browns of 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that would be a bad decision because a guy like Schwartz, you saw that. You saw that with guys like Carlton Mitchell, guys like Damian Ratley. Carlton Mitchell is one that really sticks out in my mind because he checked all the same boxes, but they shoved him out there to be that wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver 2, and then they destroy their confidence and they're done. Now the Browns can take guys, just like you said with Tony Fields. Tony Fields doesn't have to be your number 1 linebacker like with Bo Bell when they drafted Bo Bell. If Bo Bell was drafted and sat the bench, he'd be a very solid player, but instead he was in that.
Sean Thompson out of Western Texas, whatever. Was a physical freak, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to be our best defender coming out of nowhere, Texas," or I think it was Texas.
Yeah, it's so now the Browns could take those guys and have them do their specific role, and then be more successful. So I'm completely with you. We talked about the draft pretty in depth. I try to watch every prospect on my board at least once. And even with the small school guys, there was 2 guys that I was absolutely jumping up and down when they drafted. That was JOK and that was Hudson out of Cincinnati. Although everybody seemed to hate that pick, but everybody else, I was like, man, there's somebody else on the board I'd like better. But I can see why they picked it. Even with Greg Newsome, the guy I like better was Asante Samuel. Well, Greg Newsome's got 15 pounds on him with ease. So I can get why you take the more physical, bigger guy rather than say, right? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and again, I love Andrew Berry. That dude's by the way, his wife is hilarious. I don't know if you guys saw what she tweeted out a screenshot of, "Hi, Andrew. You just tired of sitting around? You want to be a Cleveland Brown?" Like just making fun of what he said to every single one of the draft picks. But I love he called Newsome coverage agnostic, whereas he's not forced to play one thing. He can play man, he can play off man, he can play zone, all of that. I do think this offseason has shown us that they're probably going to play a crap ton of zone. I don't love it, but it's a bad sign for Greedy Williams. But I think, bringing over 2 Rams guys from the top, there are a lot of zone out there. I think it's a pretty big sign that they're going to play a lot of zone. There's a mano-a-mano kind of thing where I don't love zone. I like man a little bit more, but zone gives you the turnovers, right? You're going to get far more turnovers out of zone, and I think Newsome is probably best at zone. I think Troy Hill is. I don't think Ward is, but he could do a little bit of creativity there. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like there's just a lot. There were a lot of players when the Browns drafted. I'm like at 26. I'm like, holy crap! Mm-hmm. Like you could have taken Bateman, you could have taken Newsome, you could have taken JOK, you could have taken Samuel. Like there were enough players. I'm like, take one of those guys. I don't know. Like they're all really good. Like I had players in mind. I wanted JOK. So all right, cool. Get him in the second round and let's hook it up. So yeah.
So was that your favorite pick then, JOK?
It was because again. So now I get a hitter. I always joke. Tell me how we can stop Lamar Jackson. Tell me how we can stop Patrick Mahomes. Tell me how we can stop Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. You got to be fast and you got to be able to hit. Like you have to be able to do those two things. Well, JOK can do those things. Mm-hmm. I don't give a flying rip. To be honest, and this will probably piss off a lot of people down the road. I think every single time there is a running play against the Browns defense, it's a win for the Browns. Every single time except for Lamar Jackson. Every single time someone hands the ball off to a running back against the Cleveland Browns, I believe that is a win for the Cleveland Browns. I don't give a flying rip. There may be an 80-yard touchdown in there this year, but I think every single time they hand the ball off, it is a win for the Browns. I think it sets their offense up well. I think the Browns can do so many different things. I think they have all that speed. So give me a small linebacker that hits like a freaking freight train. I'm good with that. Let's go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was the biggest pick that you were like, why did they do that?
And for me, it was Hudson. It wasn't about him as a player. Really? Where in the Sam Hill are you putting him? Like you have Forbes, you have Hubbard, you have Dunn, you have some guy named Blake, you have that really big dude. I just can't think of his name. The really tall guy that was a rookie last year. You just have so many guys behind their first five. It's not that Hudson's not good, but who are you now? You're cutting. Now I'm not saying Blake Hance is really good. But it just didn't feel like a good value given what they have on the roster. The other thing is I think Bill Callahan, they brought him in and are going to probably give him a big raise here soon because he's going to take Wyatt Teller. By the way, it's why I kind of don't think they're going to pay him. He's going to take Wyatt Teller off the scrap heap and make him really good in the zone blocking scheme. The thing we never talk about with the Shanahan offense is we always talk about the running backs that Mike Shanahan made 1,000-yard rushers, but he did the same thing with offensive linemen, right? Like he made an offensive line good. Callahan's doing that as well. So for me, it wasn't Hudson's value, or I'm sorry, it wasn't Hudson's talent. It was just the value and where do you find a position for him given who is already on the roster.
See, and I understand that 100%, right? For me, and everybody's board was different than mine. I will admit I was higher on Hudson than most, and maybe that's because I'm biased because I watched a lot of Cincinnati football. You know, there's always going to be no one's perfect, right? So with Hudson, I felt strongly that after him, there was a huge drop-off, and he was the last offensive tackle on the board that I thought had any future starting potential. I think everybody that was drafted after him there's no way in hell that guy can be a starting offensive tackle. Not that they can't but that they couldn't succeed at it. Right. You had a lot of Kendall Lambs drafted behind him. Right. I think Hudson has an if factor. I do think that the offensive line I like, and you could go back and I wrote an article when the Browns got Wyatt Teller. I gave Wyatt Teller a 3rd round grade coming out of Virginia Tech. And said at the time, I think he can be a Pro Bowl caliber player because he body bags people. And I think that was his issue with the Bills, that they were trying to move away from having those guys, those just road graders, put you in the dirt, bury you in the ground kind of linemen. And that kind of, I felt like that analysis was kind of right because the very next year after they got rid of Wyatt Teller, they drafted Cody Ford, who was a much smoother, sleeker pass specialist, played left tackle at Oklahoma, moved him to the interior, quicker feet. Wyatt Teller doesn't do that. He's going to grab you, he's going to put you in the dirt. If he does, that's what he does.
I mean, he can get out and pull, but he's not. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
He's very good at everything, but if you had to label him as what was the old NFL Fever on Xbox? There were 2 types of linemen. It was like the pass blocker, and there was like the road grader. He's the road grader type, and I feel like James Hudson kind of fits what this offense is going towards. He was one. There was only a couple offensive tackles in this class, and Donovan will remember me saying this because we kind of had that argument. Donovan does a 7-round mock draft every year. We kind of talked about James Hudson and Jackson Carman and all those guys, and Hudson was one of those guys. When you watched him, he tried to kill you. He was trying to kill the other guy, and I love it. I love it, and I think that the Browns look for that. I mean, shit, he got kicked out of the Georgia game for trying to do the same thing to Azeez Ojulari. That was his worst game by far, and I still, before he got kicked out, I still don't think he allowed a sack.
Right.
It's hard to remember, but I felt like that's why they made a priority to get him, despite his pro day numbers and yada yada yada.
Well, the other thing is, and unfortunately, Browns fans and media are not used to this. At some point, they have to be efficient with their finances. They have an out in Conklin's contract after this year that could make an easy cut. Not easy cut. Obviously, Conklin played very well, but if they need to financially, they have an out in Conklin's contract. So that's where Hudson does make sense if you see him as a possible starter at right tackle next year, and you're paying, a cheap rookie contract so that you can keep this person, that person. I think the other good thing about this offseason is the Browns didn't have to restructure anybody, right? Instead of pushing that money back, next year they can do some restructures. They have all that flexibility so that we all assume, most of us assume, Jarvis and OBJ were getting restructured, and neither of them they had to. So, but I do think, contract plays a role just for me. And again, I guess that's the same question, unless it's another cornerback, where would they have put him anyways, right? Wide receiver room's full. With Felton and Dearness Johnson, the running back room is full. So in the end, offensive line is expensive. I think that's the one thing you're going to see from this front office. They're going to draft positions that are expensive in free agency. And then they'll pay in free agency for positions that are cheaper. So safety is cheaper than outside cornerback. Slot corner is cheaper, right? I think they're going to start to pay. They'll be willing to pay for some of those cheaper free agents, and they're going to draft a lot of outside corners, left tackle, right tackle, wide receiver. Anybody that's going to get paid in free agency, they're going to try to spend as many of their draft picks on those kind of guys.
That makes sense. That's a very eloquent way of putting that, because we've had people on the podcast talk about it, but they haven't been able to put it in. It's always like, for instance, we had someone on the show a couple weeks ago that was like, you can get defensive tackle in free agency all the time. But the way you said it kind of encapsulates all of that, and it does make a lot of sense. I am by no means a cap expert. Donovan, would you fancy yourself a cap expert?
No.
So we probably struggle with that portion of the show.
Not expert. I mean, I'm not expert.
Well, but here's the thing.
It's a big word.
If you spent time having to understand the freaking NBA salary cap, where you're like, okay, traded player exception,
oh my God,
aprons, like I had to do that for so long, especially with the Cavs, who were always spending every dollar they could and trading for players. The NFL is pretty simple. Like every once in a while, I'm like, okay, where does that money go if they're traded? That's the one where I get a little lost. But everything else, I'm like, whatever. They're negative $8 million for next year. They roll over $20 million. They restructure these 3 deals, and they're at $30 million again, or whatever it could be. So the NBA sets you up, because try to understand the NBA, and you're literally like, carry the $1 million. What the freak are we doing here?
Super max deal.
Super max. You can only have You can only have one player on your team that's on the 5-year deal. So when you're negotiating with Colin Sexton, you got to get him on the 4-year deal, because if you draft Cade Cunningham, you need that 5-year deal available for him. Yeah, the NBA makes the NFL salary cap look like your 1 + 1 is equal 2.
It does. And then you got international players that are still, like San Antonio's got guys in contract in Lithuania.
They're like 36 years old and they get traded because their contract, or
Jose Calderon's still under contract playing for like Real Madrid. It's crazy.
That shit is wild. Well, before we wrap this up, I want to ask you one more thing. I know that you're obviously an Ohio State fan with the Buckeye shirt. Let's go ahead and talk about next year's draft. What's the prospect, or who's someone that you're watching that you think would be cool for the Browns next year? And feel free to name a Buckeye if you'd like.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I will be pounding the table for Chris Olave. I think he is absolutely that dude. I think he's got a little bit of OBJ in him. He's not that dynamic. I don't know who is really that dynamic. I love Chris Olave. I think I'm not the get Jarvis Landry off the field guy. I'm not the same. I like both Jarvis and OBJ. I love Olave. And if that means they have to move up to 15, or in that area to get him next year. I'm totally going to be on board with that. They were looking at possibly moving up this year into the 20s or so, or even into the teens. I know they may have had an agreement already with a certain team. So I know they're willing to be aggressive. Chris Olave is a guy that I think would be very, very good in this Browns offense.
That's interesting because we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show as well. My number one guy was Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, you like that. I mean, he's the freak. Like, I think Olave is – so I've started to be value floor. Some people value ceiling. Some people value – I think I've become this value floor with high upside. Garrett Wilson is the freak. I think Olave is the certain. Like, he is going to be really, really good. And for the Browns, I think sometimes they're going to go in different directions. Anthony Schwartz, he's that high ceiling speed guy. I just love that. I think Olave is going to put up 1,000 yards every year. And worst case scenario, he's a Juju Smith-Schuster type, but I think he's even very much better than faster. That. Yeah, I think he's Allen Robinson-ish. Allen Robinson's always going to be a comparison guy for me. It's why I like Rashad Bateman a little bit. There's differences there. I love Olave. I do think you're right. Garrett Wilson is the home run guy. I'm just not sure if he's going to be a little more boomer bust than Olave.
Do you think this Ohio State wide receiver core is the best wide receiver core in Ohio State history, or are there, there's some big competition. You got Ginn with Gonzalez and Roy Hall. You got David Boston and Dean Miller and Reggie Germany and Kenny Ray. There's a lot
you can go back to Santonio Holmes. I mean, there's a lot. I love the Ginn Gonzalez, Troy Smith year. I actually have
Roy Hall. Roy Hall. Don't disrespect Roy Hall.
I've got Ted Ginn and Anthony Gonzalez signed back here, so they're probably going to get it because they're in. I mean, I have them in my room, so I think it could be really interesting. Obviously, quarterback is going to decide a lot of that. Mm-hmm. By the way, talk about a guy, Troy Smith, a guy who, if he was in the league, if he came into the league 3 years ago, man, I think that dude would have been electric. I think the same thing about Charlie Ward. I think if Braxton Miller didn't hurt his arm, he would have been pretty good. And I think I think Troy Smith, I thought he was a very good passer. I was younger in my evaluation back then. I thought he was a very good passer. He wasn't, accurate or whatever, but it's one of those things where you look back, you're like think of Randall Cunningham in this era where you can't barely touch a quarterback. My goodness, that dude would have.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
he would have lit it up.
The Troy Smith is interesting. I try to go back. I try to watch. I actually did a recent article for Buckeyes Wire where I talked about the top 10 highest drafted quarterbacks, and Troy Smith isn't on the list. And people were asking me, "Hey, when did he get drafted?" Because it surprises people that there were 10 quarterbacks in Ohio State history that were drafted higher than the Heisman Trophy winner. Right. But when you go back and you watch Troy Smith, God, man, there was so much talent around him. I mean, it's hard. You could have made a solid argument that Ted Ginn should have won the Heisman that year, based off of how good he was.
Well, they lost the national championship game because those idiots celebrated in the end zone, right?
That's it. For sure.
I feel like the end zone celebration needs to be added to the rain delay, the drive, the fumble, the decision, all that bull crap. That end zone celebration, I've never felt that in my stomach before that early in a game where I was like, well, we're done. Wait, they just scored a touchdown. Yeah, we're done.
No shit, for real. Yeah. I mean,
I've followed too many Cleveland teams all my life. We're done. We're winning. We're done, dude.
Ted Ginn was just such a freak. He was just such an explosive freak. And Anthony Gonzalez was great too. That's how good Ted Ginn was. That Anthony Gonzalez was a first-round wide receiver and was all-American level talent in college. And we're still sitting here going, "Oh my God, Ted Ginn! Oh my God, Ted Ginn!" That's how good Ted Ginn was. But I like this conversation. I want to. Next time you're on the show, we're gonna dive more into the Troy Smith era there.
We'll pull up some film. We'll show some plays. We'll get real fancy. I learned from my boy Jake Burns. We can get that film room bad boy going.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll tell you what. I'll dig out the Troy Smith Montreal Alouettes film, and we'll try to figure out what was stopping him in this. We'll try to figure out what happened in the CFL.
It was the loony and the toonie in his pocket because they don't have ones and twos.
I think he got hurt. I think he got hurt up there. Once he got hurt up there, he had this Stanley Jackson. Same thing happened to Stanley Jackson when he was up there too. But all right, I will go ahead and end this because we've already hit the hour mark. This was the Browns Wire podcast. Donovan, where can they follow you? What do you got going on?
Yeah,
What are
follow
you
me on
saying in
Twitter.
Vegas?
Follow me at Twitter on that, or at Don James Sports. The name remains the same. I'm just taking like a little breather right now, man. Honestly, like football's kind of over. Like right now,
Dude,
it's
the
never
spring league,
over,
bro. The spring league just started, man.
Well, I got high school football stuff I got to do. So you know me, I
Dude,
don't really follow.
figured,
I don't follow those. I mean, I follow it because of you, but I'm a high
I
school
figured you'd be
football.
all over it, bro. I
I'm,
figured
I'm
you'd
a.
be all over all those former 4 or 5-star recruits.
I got to look at the future, man. That's the past. Those guys didn't make it. I got to look at.
Ouch, dude.
I gotta look at the
Ouch.
future.
He's like, you're 23. Sorry, get about it. Like, I ain't got time for you.
Yeah,
You're old. You old up in here.
I got time. I gotta look at the. No, it's cool because I mean, like West Coast just kind of had their football season, so it's I gotta watch Quinn Ewers throw in Elite 11. Hopefully, I don't know if I'm going to Elite 11 this year because I'm vaccinated though, so I can go. Because you have to have your card to go to Elite 11 this year. Your vaccination.
Is that right?
So. Yeah, so hopefully I'll be there, but we'll see. I'm gonna meet with Ryan Wright actually out in California, in Santa Monica, who does Recruiting News Guru, and we're gonna chop it up and see what we can cook up in the kitchen, man. So just look out for that, and always Browns Wire,
Absolutely.
Always this lovely podcast I do with you every week.
Absolutely, so. And as a reminder, we typically live stream on Sunday, and the MP3 arrives on Monday, but because Donovan is going on vacation, we had to move it up for him. So dramatic. Boss, what do you got going on? Where can they follow you at? And what we got on deck since you're the new captain?
So at Jared K. Mueller, JaredKmueller. Listen, we're gonna see what this is gonna look like. I've been doing this for so long with so many different teams, and so the first thing I'm gonna do is try to figure out what my guys need, right? Like, what do they want? What do they want to do? And then I'm going to figure out if there's some people from my past that might want to join in a little bit because I want to bring the best of the best here. And to be honest, I've been doing this for 12 years now. I've been blessed with some really good people. Like, I have people that are like, hey, you want some help? You want to do this? Like, but first I'm going to figure out what my guys want, what you guys want to do, how we can meet your guys' goal. And then I have some big shoes to fill. Like Jeff can write a 300-word article in about 6 seconds. And I've watched it happen, and it's ridiculous, and it's amazing. So we're going to get rolling. Thankfully, we're at kind of that transition time. We've got mini camps coming up. We've got all that stuff going. But we're going to get rolling, and I think you'll see – obviously, you're going to see some different things. Jeff and I are different people. We think a lot alike, which is why it's probably bad to ever have us on the same podcast. Like last night, we're like – no, seriously. Like last night, it was like, yep. Like, what Jeff said, what Jared said. So it's weird. We do think a lot alike. Grew up in literally the same county. Both worked at Cedar Point. We have so many, interesting stories there. But there's going to be some differences. I like things that I like running a series of things. I like people knowing what to expect a little bit. I really like people to know what they're coming for. So, Keatley's Wednesday, whatever the hell. I like things like that allow people to kind of get excited for things, but honestly, because it brings excitement for us, right? Like if I know I'm writing this kind of article regularly, like I can start to get pumped about it. I can start to own it, right? Like that's really when the best writing comes, is when people are like, man, this is how I do things. This is my deal. Like, so that's for me. Like, I think readers love it when they see real people, like, and they see what Josh likes, they see what Donovan likes, they see what Mac likes and what Kyle likes, and just they can start to feel your personalities come out and all that stuff. So like, I want to tap into that. Like, I want people to be like, man, that Josh guy. And then when someone's like, hey, I got $3 million I want to throw at somebody, like Josh and Donovan have this podcast, y'all need to hire them to do your thing. Like, that's what I want. Because reality is this will never be my full-time job. I'm a therapist. I've been a therapist for 19 years. It doesn't seem like it when you guys hear me in the sports world. I'm a different guy. So for me, it's always like, if I can get as many people hired that work with me, I'm good to go. Like, I want people getting their paper, like all day, every day, or I want them getting recognition. I want them eating dinners. I want them doing whatever. I want people at the draft. I was, credentialed this year. I was at the draft. I want people getting everything they want. I want people getting that, and if I can help with that, I'm going to help with that. That's what. Listen, you can see I get a little excited about this. Like, people are my passion up in here, which is why it just is. Like, I am so passionate about people being happy and being challenged and all that I'm gonna push. I'm gonna keep it pushing.
Well, we appreciate that. We're excited to have you. I'm sure that you're going to help. This was a blast. I hope that we can have you on the podcast more. Hopefully you can help us take this thing to the next level. Again, give us a like, listen, review, subscribe to us on YouTube, do all that good stuff. The thumbs up. Let us know what you want to hear. If you have any questions for the next week's show, comment, all that good stuff. This was Josh Keatley. You can follow me on Twitter at JoshKeatley16. You can also see my work at the Buckeyes Wire, and I'm going to try to pump out some more stuff for Browns Wire as well. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add before we end this?
Hey, we need a Donovan story from Vegas. I'm just saying. Like, we gotta get a story. And if you want to reach out to my dude, Browns mock draft, or I forget, daily mock draft, whatever Steven's
is he in Vegas?
Well, he's played Vegas forever. Like, he is he's a stand-up comedian for real. So if you want to know, like, what's the inside scoop in Vegas, where's that one place you got to go that's not going to break the pocketbook, get a hold of him. Steven will take care of you. That's my dude. He'll let you know where's just that like hidden gem. So, okay. But we need a Donovan story. Like, I want to be able to be like, all right, 20 minutes, Donovan, go.
I'm going with my girlfriend, dude. It's not going to be that wild, but I mean, it is.
I love that. I love that. That's what you said. I'm with my girlfriend, so it's gonna be boring.
No, I didn't say that. I don't know what kind of story you're expecting, like some crazy bachelor party.
Hey, I don't know. I'm just saying.
No,
like,
it's gonna be wild because I'm drinking.
Yeah,
sure.
listen, hey, make one up. I don't.
Nah, I got.
Make one up.
We'll make memories happen.
There you go. It'll be fun. There we go. We're gonna make some memories.
I gotta get some rest first, though. So.
All right, man. Feel good. All right.
Hey.
All right. This was the Browns Wire podcast, and we are out.